Today we're within the week of Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is this Jewish holiday of mysticism. What is it? It's not in the Torah. What are we doing? Let's talk about Lag BaOmer a little bit. We've got a big celebration here this Sunday. We got the hair cutting ceremony of our son Shmulik. It's going to be a beautiful celebration. But what's going on? Where does this come from? What are we doing? And what is the significance? What is the secret of Lag BaOmer? That's what we're going to learn about this morning. In brief, it all started just around 2,000 years ago in the days of the destruction of our second temple by the Romans. Titus, Vespasian, may their names be blotted out and erased. The great anti-Semites who destroyed our temples. An exile they entered us into, from which we have yet to emerge. That's how effective their conquest was of the Jewish people. I want you to think about this for a moment. Whenever the Romans conquered anybody, they disappeared. The Romans were particularly brutal. Any country, nation, ethnicity that they conquered just vanished. Only the Jews somehow managed to maintain their identity, but it's been brutal. For 2,000 years, we still haven't emerged from this whiplash. Very, very interesting thought to consider there. So what happened was, at that time, the Rabbi Akiva, I wrote about him on Friday. He rises to become this great sage. He starts his career at the age of 80 years old. Rabbi Akiva, just like Moses, starts his career at 80 years old. Like Moses, he passes away at the age of 120. What he manages to do when he starts to teach Torah is that he amasses 24,000 students, and that's without a microphone. I mean, just think about that for a moment. How do you speak to 24,000 people at the same time without a microphone? I didn't even know how he could possibly do that. Right. Wasn't on a highway. So he amasses 24,000 students. They mysteriously die in a plague between Pesach and Shavuos. Pesach and Shavuos was historically the most joyous time in Jewish history. 3,336 years ago, Pesach was the moment, the beginning of the redemption, when God tells the Jewish people, or Moses tells Pharaoh from God, let my people go so that they may serve me. We're out of Egypt in order to be able to become the chosen people. We're literally counting down the days by divine decree. We're counting down the days. This is a mitzvah in the Torah called the Firas HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, which is a countdown from Exodus to true freedom, to breaking the glass ceiling, to becoming one with God Almighty, God's chosen people. It was a joyous period of time. It was a joyous period of time for about 1,300 years until the destruction of the temple the days of Rabbi Akiva, when the students of Rabbi Akiva suddenly die in that same period. And now we go from a period of great joy to a period of semi-mourning, which is why today, 2,000 years later, we still don't make weddings in these days. We still don't have haircuts and other interesting mourning memorials, because we're mourning the destruction, the death of these 24,000 students. Can you, just to give an example, imagine today if suddenly 24,000 of the greatest doctors in the world would suddenly die. But what would happen? Think about that. 24,000 of the best doctors in the world. What would that do to the medical profession? Decimated, right? 24,000 of, I don't know, whatever. You can figure it out, right? It was a national mourning when 24,000 of the great students passed. Now, interesting, Rabbi Akiva, in his brilliance, managed to rebuild with 5 new students, but that's a different story, a different sermon. What I want to focus on today is a brief moment of respite in the middle of this period of mourning. The 33rd day of the Omer. 33rd is Lag BaOmer. Every Hebrew letter is also a number, and therefore Lag is Lamed Gimel. Lamed is 30, Gimel is 3. 30 plus 3 is 33. 33rd day of the Omer, that's Lag BaOmer. On the day of Lag BaOmer, the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. It also, and remember I told you that after they all died, he built himself up with 5 new students. One of those 5 new students was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the 5 students with which he rebuilt Judaism. Years later, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passes away on this day of Lag BaOmer. So 2 things happen. First of all, the students stopped dying on that day. Also, years later, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the surviving student of Rabbi Akiva, he passes away on this day. It's his yahrzeit. Ever since then, this day has been associated with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, with joy and celebration. Specifically with what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was known for. What was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai known for? Jewish mysticism. He was the one that wrote down the book of the Zohar. He wrote down the book of the Zohar, which is the book of Kabbalah. Remember, Moses brings down from Mount Sinai the written Torah that we are familiar with, the oral Torah, which is the explanations of the written Torah. That was oral, was a verbal tradition. He also brings with him the secret Torah, known as the Kabbalah. The secret Torah was not written down. Neither was the oral Torah. The oral Torah was written down by a Jew in the days of the Romans by the name of Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda the Chassid. He was the one that wrote down the oral Torah. If you've studied with me the course Book Smart, you will be familiar with what I'm talking about, right? Book Smart, we learned about this and the executive summary of Torah. There, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince is the editor of the oral Torah, which is documented in the Mishnah and the Talmud. But the Zohar was written by another Jew at that similar time, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, he didn't make it up. He just wrote it down from the tradition as was passed down verbally from Moses of Mount Sinai. So it was secret, right? Now, as a result of that, remember, the day of the yahrzeit of a person is not just a memory of that person. It's not just a day when we remember that person. The day of the yahrzeit is actually the day of the culmination of all of the energies, talents, powers, character of that person, when it all comes up to a head. And there's a tradition in Judaism, foundational idea in Judaism, that the calendar is not just a memorial event. The days of the calendar are channels of energy, conduits of energy. So therefore, when a date recurs, it's not just a day when we remember something that happened on that day. It's actually a day when that same energy flows. In the words of the Megillah of Esther, and these days are remembered and fulfilled and acted upon. Which means the dates on the calendar occurring doesn't just remind us, it actually channels energy of that original event. Which is why the first day of Passover, the day of freedom. The day of Rosh Hashanah is the day of renewal. The day of Yom Kippur is the day of forgiveness. The day of your birthday is the day of your energy flowing at its greatest peak. But even more than the day of one's birthday is the day of one's yahrzeit. Because the day of your birthday is the day of your potential. The day of your yahrzeit is the day of your actual. Right? Not your yahrzeit, a person's yahrzeit. A day of what they actually fulfilled. And therefore, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose yahrzeit is on Lag BaOmer, this is the day which channels all of his unique contribution to the world, to mankind. And that was the gift of Kabbalah, the gift of Jewish mysticism. It's with that context that we can begin to understand today, to unlock the secret of Lag BaOmer and what's so exciting, unique, and special, and how that applies to us. Today's Torah study is sponsored lovingly by Bob and Marilyn Kramer in loving memory of Marilyn's mother, Vivian Lachowitz, on the occasion of her yahrzeit today. May her yahrzeit, may her neshama be elevated in the power of today's Torah study, and may may this Torah study channel her potential, her actual, even higher. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit about the context of Lag BaOmer, let's talk about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's uniqueness was that he was able to live in a state of redemption, in a state of geula, redemption. He was not encumbered by the state of exile. Allow me to explain. So, there's a story. I'm going to start with a story. The story goes in the Gemara Shabbos about it's in the Medrash. The story is from the Medrash, Rabbi, Shemais Rabbi, which tells us as follows. One of the students of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai went out to the diaspora and he became wealthy. his friends, the fellow students of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, became jealous. So what does Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai do? He takes them to the valley of where he was stationed, which is Har Miron. Har Miron is the mountain of Miron. It's the tallest mountain in Israel, I believe. Certainly in the north of Israel, there's a very important army base up there. Hezbollah is constantly trying to attack it right now. You can see it from Tzfat. It's a very beautiful mountaintop. In fact, this Sunday, supposedly, it's supposed to be hundreds of thousands of people will go to the tomb of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in Miron for the first time ever. This year, it's actually prohibited by the army because of the dangers. I mean, think about 100,000 people or more coming to Miron in direct sight of Hezbollah. It's a terrifying thought. So he brings his students, his jealous students now his envious students to the valley of Miron. And he calls out like this, valley, valley, fill up with dinars of gold. He commands the valley to fill up with dinars of gold. And that's exactly what happened. Now the students are like, oh, this is amazing. We can grab as much gold as we want. Said Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, yes, you can take whatever you want. But no, that whatever you're taking now, you're taking out of your account in the world to come. Take whatever you want. But you're debiting your own accounts, your own, your own savings accounts for the world to come. The students understood and they didn't take it. That's a story. Nice story, right? Interesting, right? In this story manifests the secret, the power of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, about whom we know that is the Talmud in Shabbos 11a testifies that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was Teirasei Nasa. His Torah was his entire essence, right? We know that Torah is the source of all prosperity. This is what the Torah tells us. God's gift to mankind is the Torah. In the Torah, it says that the Torah is the source of all prosperities, physical, spiritual, bounty. All of it comes through Torah. Torah promises us that if the Jewish people fulfill the Torah, then we will have all the abundance we need, the blessings that we need, peace, and everything else that we need. This is what it says at the very end of, at the beginning of next week's Torah portion. Next week's Torah portion, which is the last portion of the book of Vayikra. If you toil in the study of my Torah and you fulfill my mitzvahs, then I will give you rain in its time. You'll have peace in the land. You'll have whatever you need. That's exactly what the Torah promises us. So why don't we have it? Why is it that the rabbis, supposedly the Torah students, aren't the most wealthiest amongst us? You think? That's what it says in the Torah, right? Should be.
Every day in the second paragraph.
Right, we said in the Shema as well. Exactly. Exactly, it's the second paragraph of the Shema. So why is it then that it's not apparently so? This is because of exile. What does exile mean? Exile is a state of concealment and confusion. That's the definition of exile. Exile doesn't mean necessarily that we're not living in the land of Israel, or that we're not dominant over the land of Israel, or that there's a lot of anti-Semitism. Those are all consequences of the essential point of exile. The essence point of exile is confusion. That's the essence of exile, confusion, lack of clarity, which is why, think about this. So the ICC, the International Criminal Court, the geniuses over there declared today that they're ready to issue a war crimes arrest warrant against who? Against the head of Hamas and the head of Israel. Yahya Sinwar, may his name be blotted out and erased, as well as Bibi Netanyahu. Moral equivalency here, right? Because what they would prefer is that Israel should offer coffee to Hamas, right? And surrender. That's what Israel should do, according to them, to these, great minds of the ICC, right? I mean, you look at a world which is totally confused, a world which has totally lost its way. This is the world that we live in, a world in which Israel is accused of war crimes for the sin of defending herself. You heard, by the way, the president of Iran yesterday was killed with his foreign minister. Apparently, there was 400 women and 700 children on the plane as well as 800 nurses and press corps. They were all killed at the same time. Yeah, from the God's the health ministry, and they found this out in 15 seconds of and it was Israel's fault, exactly, right? Of course, I forgot that. We live in a world of total chaos and confusion. This is the essence of exile, where cause doesn't lead to the effect, where Torah doesn't lead to prosperity. This is what it means to be in exile, where prayer doesn't lead to obvious and immediate results. A state of redemption, of geula, is the opposite of exile confusion. It's a state of clarity, where everything is clear. Think about this for a moment. Isaiah tells us, and when Mashiach comes, the word of God will be revealed, and all fleshly eyes will see that the word of God is spoken. What does that mean? It means that any Hamas terrorist, any Iranian diplomat, Ayatollah will see a Jew and see a word of God. He'll see a holy soul of God. And he'll say, that's beautiful. It's not something to destroy. It's not something to hate. It's something to love and embrace and cherish and uplift. Right? Can you imagine a world like that? That's Mashiach. Mashiach is when we see the truth all around us. Instead of being stuck in the superficial perception of reality, which is what we call klipa, getting stuck in external perceptions, we'll be able to see inner truth, essence. It's like having an X-ray vision to be able to see the truth within everything. So instead of fighting with your spouse or fighting with your children or fighting with your neighbors, you'll embrace each other in the most loving, cherishing, healthy, wholesome relationship. That is a state of redemption. Instead of being confused, why did God do this? Why did God do that? Why me? Why the suffering? Everything will become clear. That is redemption. In fact, the word for redemption and exile is exactly the same word. Exile and redemption in Hebrew is Gola. Gola, Gola means exile. And how do you say redemption? Not Gola, but Geula. Gola is exile, Gola. Redemption is Geola, Geola. Geula. The only difference is the letter Aleph. What's the letter Aleph? Aleph is one. One is God. One God. When you infuse the awareness of God, that's transforming darkness into light, exile into redemption. Clarity amidst the consciousness. Clarity and consciousness amidst the confusion. It's like the rise of dawn in the midst of the night. So when the dawn rises, oh, right, that's where my keys are. That's where I left my shoes, right? You're able to see clearly. That's redemption. This is the world in which Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was living in. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was saying, you want money? You're jealous of that guy? Seriously? You want money? Here, I'll show you money. Valley fill up with dinars of gold. Because he was living in a state of flow, in a state of clarity. There was no hiccups in the system where Torah brings bounty. Finished. The problem was, he says, listen, I just want you to know that this is on delay because it's coming to you in the world to come, which is a world of consciousness, heaven, Shamayim, right? In Gan Eden. Right now, we don't have this right now in this world because this is a world of Golus, of exile. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself had no qualms, no confusion. Everything was clear, and he was able to share using that story. It was one story from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai where I was able to show you his clarity, his vision, and how he lived his life. So if you think about it this way, you have a guy here who is effectively of another world. Is he an imposter to our world? No, he's in the real world. We're the ones that are in a state of confusion. There's a beautiful analogy from the Mitzvah Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, who tells us like this. He gives us an example of what it's like to be related to exile and redemption. Of, in the olden days, the Russian times, the days of the baron, the squires, what do they call them? The feudal systems. There was no government. If you didn't pay your rent, you'd be thrown into a dungeon, a debtor's prison, and there was nobody else to turn to. And it was only in the grace of the heart of the creditor that would decide when you'd be released, if ever. So this guy gets thrown into the debtor's prison with his wife and children, and he sees his other families over there. Not the first one that was thrown into the debtor's prison, and they're stuck over there. Every day as the hatch opens up, some bread and water gets thrown down, and that's it. They live there for years, for decades. The kids grow up together. They get married. The old generation dies. The kids grow up. They have kids, There's a third, fourth generation growing up in the dungeon, and the creditor, the squire, he also dies, and his children, they keep up the tradition. They throw in the bread and the water down into the hatch of the dungeon. 5-6 generations later, it's an analogy. The kids in the dungeon, they've never seen the light of day. They know their grandfather's grandfather talks about a world where there's something called the sun, and there's flowers and sunflowers, and there's water. But they say that we don't believe in that stuff. We don't believe in that stuff. We believe in the sky opens up and bread comes out every day, water comes out every day, and that's how we live. And life is dark. There's no such thing as light, sunset, no such thing. It was just like, you believe in that stuff. So there they are. They're living in the dungeon 5, 6, 7 generations later, and this is what's going on. One day, the hatch opens up, and with the bread and water comes another human. He gets thrown in the dungeon. Who's he? He's a debtor, didn't pay his debt, so he gets thrown in. And he says, oh, nice to meet you all. How long have you been here? Oh, we've lived here forever. This is real life. Where do you come from? Oh, I come from the real world. What? What are you talking about there? And he tells them about sunflowers, and he tells them about sunsets, and about colors, and they think he's nuts. But really, who's nuts? They're nuts. They just got used to the dark. The same way, says the Vigler Rabbi, the metaphor, we've lived in this dungeon for almost 2,000 years. We've been here for about 100 generations. And we hear grandfather talks about a world of miracles and splitting seas and, Hashem Echad and whatever. You believe in that stuff? Okay, so, but, the real world is money and United Nations and dealing with anti-Semites and Yale and Harvard and Stanford. And that's what life is really all about. Torah mitzvahs, if you have extra time, if you're bored, fine. If you're not good at golf, then you do that stuff. So then comes every once in a while, somebody shows up and he says, by the way, this is not the real world. You're living in a fake reality. A Rebbe shows up and he opens up our eyes. The Rebbe tells us, no. You guys are, this is not the real world. This is just the dungeon that you're stuck in. And then they were able to learn slowly to remind ourselves of where we're supposed to be. And that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is. He's this guy whose Yartzeit and Lag BaOmer reminds us about the truth. That we're living in a world of darkness, in a world of lies, in a world of exile. And truly it's Torah, which is the source of all prosperity and blessing, even though we can't see it right now because we've been stuck in a state of exile. But God willing, soon, with the coming of Mashiach, we'll see it. The greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is that the fact that his entire essence was Torah, therefore, the destruction of the temple and the exile didn't bother him at all. This is actually quoted in the book of the Arizal, called Pelach Hariman. The student of the Arizal writes this in Pelach Hariman that for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was no obstruction for him, even though he was living in a state of exile. It didn't bother him. Just a quick example of this is the holy Ruzhiner, Rabbi Stroll, the Rebbe of Ruzhin, lived about 150, 200 years ago. In the morning, he would wake up, and what would he do? He'd open his window to smell if Mashiach had come. He would smell, and he'd smell, Mashiach's not here. The question is asked, why do you have to open his window? Why couldn't he smell in his own room if Mashiach had come? And the answer is, because in his own room, Mashiach had already come. In his own world, in his own immediate environment, he was living in a state of consciousness. The question is, what was the world around? What were the neighbors doing? That's what he wanted to see.
It also supports your view that Mashiach is a process, not just one.
Mashiach is not an event. Mashiach is not an event. Mashiach is a slow process of rising to consciousness. Yeah. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was there. Rabbi Shmuel the Ruzhiner was there. Our Rebbe is over there. The question is where we are. Lag BaOmer is our ability to tap into that moment of truth, an island, an oasis in time, to be able to check out of exile and experience redemption for 24 hours. That's why it's the festival of Jewish mysticism. I'll get to that in a moment. The power of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is such that he's able to reveal within a time of exile that even though we're living in a time of concealment of divine awareness, it's concealed. Nevertheless, he's able to reveal to us the essence, the X-ray, to show us what's really going on. How did he do that? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he did it by revealing the secret, the essence of Torah. What's the essence of Torah? The mystical parts of Torah. Remember, I told you he wrote down the Zohar, which is the secrets of Torah. He wrote that down, the Kabbalah. So by sharing the secrets of the Kabbalah, he shared with us the essence of Torah, which manifests into the essence, the X-ray of all existence. He gave us the tools to be able to crack the code on all of the facade that we see, to be able to break through, to chisel through the superficial, and to be able to find the essence. How do we do that? Through the power of the secret Torah, through the power of Kabbalah, which is what we here at Chabad, what we specialize in. That's what Chabad is. Chabad is the teachings of Jewish mysticism, illuminating every single aspect of our lives. Give me any topic, and there's nothing which is divorced from Torah. Think about that. Think about that for a moment. It's not like there's any single topic that is not relevant to Chabad. Think about that, right? Somebody told me he's canceling his subscription to New York Times because he gets a taste of everything here at the show. Think about that, right? Politics, history, geography, military, whatever. You got it all. Food, exactly. Because it's not like we're a spiritual center, which is removed from the rest of the world. No. Anything you want. Golf, we do golf. Military, we do military. Politics, whatever. We do it all. We can explain it because Torah is the essence of existence. The secrets of Torah are able to access. They're the mothership. They access everything. You know, all rivers run to the sea, right? So, exactly, and that's the presentation you're going to see on Friday morning. This is the essence of the presentation about Friday morning, is that when it comes to science and Torah, many people make the misconception before they encounter Chabad that they think of science and Torah as two separate things, two separate lanes that have nothing to do with each other. But when you study Hasidus, you realize it's not two separate lanes, it's subterranean. Torah is the tunnel that goes beneath science. And without understanding Torah, you can't properly understand science, and vice versa. They're actually two sides of the same coin, instead of two competing and utterly unrelated truths. Because if that's your case, it's like looking at a human body and ignoring the soul. It's like saying, well, the soul and the body, they're completely separate studies. No, you make a very big mistake if you treat a person medically, give him a surgery, right, for his depression, right? Give him a surgery for his depression because you're a doctor only of the body and you don't deal with the soul. You make a huge mistake over here. Maybe he needs to change his habits, change his lifestyle. Maybe he needs to look. You got to look at the bigger picture. And if you're only going to look at the body, at the physical, and ignore the spiritual, you make a huge mistake. And that's a huge problem when it comes to very arrogant doctors. When it comes to arrogant doctors that feel that they know everything, that they're God's gift to mankind, they are God, and therefore what they don't know doesn't exist, and what they do know is all that exists. Right? Those are the ones that are threatening to destroy their patients, because out of their hubris, out of their arrogance, they say, no, this is what you have to do. And there's no room for any other wisdom.
So Mashiach is a state of being.
Yeah.
And that's based around clarity, truth, love, light, whatever. Can that happen for an individual, or is it the whole world has to arrive at that state of being?
So the question is, just to repeat for our viewers, if Mashiach is an individual state of being, can that happen one person at a time? Right? That's the question?
Or does it require, is it a state of being for an individual, or is it a state of being for the world, or the state of being for a particular area? It's
one human being waking up at a time. One human being waking up out of hibernation. We've been hibernating for 2,000 years. And as we slowly awaken from our slumber, one at a time, enough of us will become conscious to create the tipping point to tip all of humanity to consciousness. So yes, it is one at a time. One at a time. Yeah, it's not all or nothing. It's like sunrise. You've ever noticed sunrise? It's beautiful. Slowly, 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 slowly. It's not like 1 second. It's very gradual. Yeah, Jews are we're the lights unto the nations. This is what it means. We're light unto the nations. You're supposed to wake them up. Bring the dawn. Absolutely. When it happens in you, it happens in the world around. Now, this power is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, this power of consciousness, of redemption, is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai infused in his Torah, in his Torah teachings. And through that, he empowered us to do the same, to walk in his path. To this very day, when we study Torah, especially the Torah that he revealed, which is the mysticism of Torah, which is Kabbalah and Hasidus, the way it was. Now, Kabbalah is very difficult to understand. You can't really study Kabbalah. But that's the purpose of Hasidus, Chabad. Chabad Hasidus is the rational explanation of Jewish mysticism. Because before, Chabad Hasidus was there only for very lofty individuals to even begin to fathom what's going on. But by making it rational, Chabad Hasidus, the Rebbes of Chabad made it accessible to every single human being. That's the uniqueness of Chabad. We now become empowered to experience the power of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, to tap in, because we have the tool of intellect. We can reveal the secrets of Torah in every part of our lives. We can reveal the secret of redemption, of Geula, the Aleph. We can reveal the Aleph, the essence of God, in every part of exile, transforming exile into redemption, until we manifest it eventually in the physical plane. Especially in these final generations, we are the generation of the coming of the Mashiach, about which it says in the Zohar that the generation which will welcome Mashiach is related to the generation of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So it says in the Zohar. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote that the generation that will welcome the Mashiach is related to the generation of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and therefore, just like they were able, and they lived in very difficult times, by the way, the Romans, they had very difficult times. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was hiding from the Romans for 13 years. They were trying to kill him. They were brutal at that time. Terrible, terrible anti-Semitism. Therefore, through the study of the secret part of Torah, and through spreading and disseminating and sharing in a rational, meaningful, and exciting and personal way the secrets of Torah, we will reveal all of its power until it manifests in revealed goodness, which is obvious and apparent in the physical plane, literally. And that is what's so unique and special about Lag BaOmer. It's the X-ray of reality. It is our modern day ability to crack the code on the darkness of this exile, to break through the fog and shine the light of consciousness through the power of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is the secrets of Jewish mysticism. And that's a wrap. Thank you very much, everybody.